Hi there, so today we're going to make one of these. This is a AB select switch. It allows us to plug in a guitar and a bass, and we can switch between them and output to a looper or an effects unit. Also we've got a DC input there to power these LEDs, which will show us which input is selected. Let's get started. So here's what we need to make it. An aluminium enclosure, 10k resistor, 2 LEDs, a DC jack, a latching stomp switch, and 3 1/4-inch jacks. And the next step is to measure everything up so we can mark where the holes are going to be drilled. So I'm going to put the DC jack at the top, one of the inputs here, and I'll have the output on the other side, like so. These can go quite close together. Now we've got that in place, we can see where the switch is going to go, followed by the last jack, leaving enough space to put the LED at the bottom. And just going to punch the holes to make it easier to drill. Just using a screw and a hammer here. And then we'll start with pilot holes. And now we'll largen the holes to fit the 1/4-inch jack. So if I take my 1/4-inch jack, just want to make sure our drill bit is slightly larger than the hole we're taking in, but not any larger than the bolt. So with the holes drilled, we can now try the DC jacks. Great, starting to look like a stomp box already. Now to drill switch hole. Try the switch. And now we've put the switch and the jack sockets in, and you can see it's quite tight, but everything's going to fit okay. So we've just got to drill the remainder holes for the LEDs and the DC in. So the drilling complete, so there's the fun part, putting everything together and soldering it all in. So just going to make some little link cables. This is just a single core wire. You can use anything, cut down on old cables you're not using. So we're now going to solder these link cables onto the jack sockets, but we'll tin the cable first with a bit of solder. We're now going to solder these little link cables we've made onto here, so we need to make sure it goes to the right part. So the tip will go to here, which we can see comes through to this point, and the sleeve goes to this one because we can see that's connected straight to there. So we're going to tin both the parts on this, and then just add the cable to what will be the tip. I'm going to do the same for the sleeve side, I'm just using this thinner red cable. It's actually going to connect through the metal of the box, so this is really just a precaution in case the screws won't loosen, it makes bad connection. So now we do the same with the DC jack. Start putting everything in place. I'll start with this DC jack. And it's all going to be a bit tight in here, so what I'm going to do is bend these pins. Okay, and now the switch. Switch works is we've got 3 banks of 3, so it's basically one switch repeated 3 times. The middle is common, so all these middles. So at the moment I can measure from the middle to here and we've got a complete circuit. Measure from the middle to here and we haven't, and that is repeated 3 times over. If we click the switch, it will then reverse the circuit from there and open circuit from here, and it will do that on all 3 lines of it. So what we're going to do is use one side for switching the signal, and then we're going to use the other side purely to power the LEDs, and the reason for doing this is we don't get any DC noise going onto the signal path. So this is our output. We'll start with that. That effectively goes to the center to be the common. And we've also got to take into account the depth of the box, so the bottom will actually fit. So we'll solder it on to the side like so. So next we'll do the A input, which is the one we've got at the top, the one by the DC socket. Again, we'll go sideways. And finally, B. So that's now kind of a working device. We don't have the LEDs connected yet, so it's hard to know which input we're selecting. So that's our next part. So with an LED, we have 2 pins, and one of them is longer than the other. The longer is the positive and the shorter is the negative. This is where our 10k resistor comes in. We've used this side here to do the signal switching, so we're going to use the furthest away side to do the LED switching. And to do that, we need a 10k resistor, which will bring the 9 volts down to a point where it won't blow the LED up. So I'm just going to do this very short to this point. And this red cable will join to the other side, so again, make it nice and short. I'm going to just put a bit of heat shrink I had lying around over that, which will cover the resistor. Now we need to decide what colour LEDs are going where. This is the box the right way up. I think I'm going to have blue on the bottom and white on the top. And just like we did with the jacks, I'm going to solder some cables ready to go onto the LEDs positives. So we'll cut these down. Just solder our positives to the switch. So the white LED I'm going to do to the top one. And the blue LED to the bottom one. So now we'll do the negatives. So here's the negative from the DC jack. I'm just going to twist a link cable which can feed the bottom LED. Again, cut it short. So now we've got those in, we can do a little test on the LEDs. So I'm just going to plug in this test battery. You can see our blue LEDs on there, and when we click our switch, it transfers to the white. So there's only one thing left to do now, and that's connect up the earths of the jack cables, the sleeves. So let's do that. Them all here, so I've just twisted them together. And we're just going to solder those. And a little bit of insulation tape. Not that it matters too much if this shorts out against the chassis, because effectively it already is because of the connection through the casing. But we'll do the same for the LEDs. Now on the final parts, just to put the LEDs into place, I'm just going to pop a little bit of super glue, feed that through, and then hold it pretty much where you want it to stick out. So I'll just let that dry a little bit. And now we're ready to put it all together. So you can see it's all a bit cramped in there, but I'm just going to make sure the jack cable fits okay. Yeah. 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 Time to put the back on. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of insulation tape on the back under the switch, just to make sure it doesn't short out. Here it is, all ready for the pedal board. Let's plug it in. So that's our input to the HX Stomp, DC, guitar, bass. Okay, so it's time to test it.